Yep, you read the title correctly. I am going to attempt to spend the next 24 hours with this 10-year-old smartphone as my daily. Wish me luck. The first thing I immediately noticed is just how small and light the Nexus 5 was. So this is the Nexus 5 and then this is the OnePlus 12 that I normally use, and look at the size difference. It's ridiculous. Like if I put them right next to each other, you can see just how big the newer phone is compared to the Nexus 5. It's night and day, and the difference in weight as well is quite astounding. Like this feels way heavier than this. The main concern I had coming into this whole experiment was the question of security. This Nexus 5 unit was running Android 4.4.4, which had been out of date for a long time, and so it hadn't had a security update in almost 8 years. This phone officially supports Android 6, but it wouldn't update the normal over-the-air way. I think I'm gonna have to manually flash Android 6 on here with my laptop. It's been a few years since I've done this, so wish me luck. Micro USB. Definitely don't miss this. After a couple of hours, I finally got Marshmallow running on the phone, but then I ran into other issues. And since it's an older version of Chrome and an older version of Android, I've just tried to load up our website here, and I'm just gonna have to click through these warnings. Yeah, this isn't a great experience to start off with, I can't lie to you guys. I'm certainly made to feel like I shouldn't be here, like when you're trespassing on like an abandoned building ground. It just doesn't feel like I should be. It just feels like I should be kept out and use something a lot newer, which isn't the best sign. So maybe I won't be installing my banking apps on here. This is gonna be a tough one. I spent the next couple of hours trying to figure out what I could do with such outdated software, with so many websites and apps simply unusable. So YouTube is a little bit of a pain to use because you have to use the Chrome browser, the outdated Chrome browser. Performance isn't amazing, but honestly it's usable. Like I can get myself on YouTube kind of working. The quality isn't amazing, it's not awful, like it's pretty decent. It doesn't seem to chug or lag, and the speakers built into this phone, not amazing, but not awful. So yeah, YouTube I would say is usable, even on the outdated browser with the YouTube basically just working through a browser instead. It's not awful, it's just not great. Some websites like Reddit just straight up won't really load. Like there's content on the screen and you can sort of read a lot of the text, but then you can't get to the comments, and obviously the formatting is just way out of whack. It just does not like it. There are certain websites that just don't look very good. Like Met Office, for example, like I can at least check very basic information, but it's sort of, and it kind of works, but it's just not as it's meant to be displayed. So you can see a lot of this stuff, while you can see the information, it just doesn't look very pretty. And you're just gonna find that with a lot of websites because they're just updated for the newer versions of the browsers. And obviously this is running a really old version. So interestingly, the app where I get all of my Counter-Strike news, HLTV, seems to be practically perfect. Like there's nothing here that I wouldn't normally see on my new phones with new software. And then let's just say I click into an article like that. It's not the quickest in the world, it does take a little bit to spin up, but this is all the correct formatting. Everything's in the right place and it all loads relatively well. There doesn't seem to be any kind of graphical glitches. So it's not like every website is going to appear poorly, it's just a lot of them are. Spotify actually strangely works, and I've logged in and everything, and it's fine. Like it plays and then you can skip and it just goes to the next one. Like it works as it should. The headphone jack is really nice to have. And yeah, this works, this app works. Actually, Spotify is one of the best supported. I believe it supports all the way back to 5.0, which is fantastic really. I've even managed to get the legendary Temple Run to load on this thing. Although, as you'll quickly see, whilst I can do all this jumping, the tilting just straight up doesn't work. And this doesn't work in like the auto rotate in the browser either. I'm pretty sure the accelerometer just straight up doesn't work on this phone, unfortunately. And that's really unfortunate because obviously it's a legendary phone, so it's starting to lose some of its way is kind of sad. Phones these days have heaps of cameras on them, but back in 2013 you had a front camera and you had a back camera. You got to remember, this is a time where Android phones had a reputation for just not having very good cameras, and the Nexus 5 never had a strong camera on it, even when it was first released. Did you know this phone had HDR Plus built into it? Me neither. Actually, it was a friend and colleague, Alex Doby from XDA, that pointed this out to me. Even in a few samples I did take with this phone over my time with it, the picture quality from the 8 megapixel rear and 1.3 megapixel selfie cameras were pretty poor, to say the least. We've come a long way since 2013, and it's a testament to just how advanced computational photography has become. But there's only so much limited hardware can give you. There's actually quite a lot I hadn't accounted for before using the 10-year-old Nexus 5 as my daily. Firstly, the fact that the update servers weren't about to let me update beyond Android 4.4.4. Like, it saw the 5.0.1 update and just wouldn't let me download it. I cleared the cache, factory reset it, restarted the phone, connected it to a different Wi-Fi. It just wasn't having any of it. And having to manually flash it was not something I expected to have to do after however many years it's been since I last did that. The phone from an apps perspective is practically unusable, which is a shame because it's such a legendary phone, and it feels like just the other day that I had one of these myself, so kind of nuts that from that perspective it's not great. You could of course flash a custom ROM, something like Lineage OS, which would be great and does help older phones like this stay as up to date as possible, and it's something I'm massively supportive of, but that's out of the realms of possibility for the great many people who might try this or have an older phone, so yeah, it's kind of one of those hit or miss things. The vibration motor is awful. I forgot just how bad they used to be and how great they are these days. There's just no detail whatsoever. The fact it's made of plastic means it scuffs fairly easily, and there are a few scuffs on this already. I'm sorry, Alex, you scuffed it before I got it. There's also no IP rating, so keeping it out of the British weather was quite the priority for me. Also, turns out I used the space bar, the holding down and using it as a cursor in text fields a lot more than I thought I actually did. And it was just a weird force of habit trying to do it on this and it not working. The same with the gestures actually. I thought I'd be fairly used to using the 3 buttons at the bottom, but it's been a while since I last did that. Also, micro SIM instead of nano SIM. I had to find an adapter, I had to dig one out of the drawer to get my SIM card to work in it, and actually it did work in it. But there was no 5G, no Wi-Fi 6, it has micro USB, 5-watt charging. A lot of smartwatches have 2 gigs of RAM, and this just about has 2 gigs too. But there were some genuine positives. I loved having the headphone port, which was great paired with Spotify. I could actually listen with IEMs, which was fantastic. I also can't believe how much I miss a notification LED. I notice this every time I use a Sony phone. I just love having the LED there. I know always on displays are more comprehensive, but something about a little blinking light which just feels better for me. And the compact size was fantastic after coming from such huge phones I've been using recently. Recently reviewed the S24 Ultra, which is just ginormous, and this is so much more easily one-handable. The 60Hz refresh rate of the 5's display is also basically a non-issue. Like, yes, I noticed the drop from 120, but it didn't put me off hugely, and I don't really find high refresh rate displays totally necessary on smartphones in the first place. The screen overall, even though it was an IPS and not the beautiful AMOLEDs we have today, still felt really good. It looked really decent, although it wasn't nearly as bright as the new AMOLEDs on sale right now, which is a big shame because it's just one of those things where you go into a bright area and you're like, oh, I can't drag the brightness slider up any further than it is. So yeah. I was also pretty shocked at the reasonable performance. Yes, reasonable. It wasn't fast, wasn't great, but reasonable performance of the Snapdragon 800 with 2 GB of RAM. Yeah, it ran better than expected, although take this with a pinch of salt, I wasn't able to run most apps on here. So it's not like I was doing anything crazy on here to really push the phone, but it performed admirably. And the battery life is pretty shocking. It's only a 2300 mAh battery, or way less than half of my OnePlus 12, but even with lowered expectations, it's likely this thing will not get you through a full day. And when it doesn't, it has 5-watt charging, so don't expect to top it up in a pinch either. I think I came into this whole experiment naively thinking that using one of these daily would be easier than it actually was. And perhaps mainly that's because the Nexus 5 launch doesn't feel like 10 years ago. Like, I remember when it came out, I remember being really excited about it. I had a Nexus 4 at the time. Just crazy to think that there have been 8 almost 9 generations of Pixel and 2 generations of Nexus since this thing came out. That is wild, and it makes me feel old. It's unlikely that many of you are going to try this at home, but if you were tempted, I wouldn't bother. It's more hassle than it's really worth. Let me know what you think about using an older phone in the comments, guys. Are you the sort of people to use Lineage OS? Do you remember the Nexus 5 launch? Also, whilst you're down in the comments, do feel free to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.